Hi, my name is Genevieve Brockway, and I'm here to share with you my experience of working at Fulton Elementary this year with my student Madison and the assessment that I did on her and to assess her reading levels. The layout of this year started with giving my student a pre-Rigby assessment to assess her levels of her comprehension and retelling of a story, and then we moved on to taking that information that we learned from the Rigby and putting it into our lessons. We followed the reciprocal teaching model, which uses the 4 components of reading of predict, clarify, question, and summarize, and the student would have to gauge what they thought they were going to learn by saying, I think I will learn because, and then finding their evidence in the text. Finally, at the very end of our lessons, we would give them another assessment, which was the post-assessment. At the very end, using that same text from the Rigby from the very beginning of the year and assessing their levels now in comparison. Madison was not my student starting at the beginning of the year, so I do not have that data, but I do have the data from when she finished her time with me. With each lesson that was taught, there had to be a standard and objective within each lesson to help keep us focused on the material and the objective of the day. So for the standard that I used most often with Madison was the Iowa Core Standard, which said to employ the full range of research-based comprehension strategies. I use this one most often with her. And over here we have the objectives that I used with her. 2 of the most important ones I used were I can make predictions about the text to be read and find evidence to support my reasoning. And then also I can make predictions, clarify, question, and summarize the text that I read. All of my lessons focused on the Fab 4 reading components, being predict, clarify, question, and summarize. I would have the student predict about what they thought was going to happen in the story based on the cover or the title or some of the text features in the book. Next, they would have to clarify a word or an idea that was in the book. Next, they would have to think of a question about the text that they had, maybe something that they had prior to reading the text or something maybe after. And then finally, they would have to summarize all the information that they did, that they learned in that day. I used these note cards that I made in my lessons with Madison to help us make sure that we hit every single one of these reading components when we did our lessons. Madison had its own specific graphic organizer that Madison had to fill out. She had to draw on her prior knowledge of the topic of our text, which was storms. Each chapter was a little bit different, so she had to fill out the top of our graphic organizer to tell me what she knew about it. And then as we went through our lesson, she filled in each of the Fab 4 columns to make sure that we hit each of those. And these are some of the graphic organizers that we used in our lessons. Every time that I work with Madison, I made sure to give really specific feedback that was very deliberate, and I was very conscious of the wording that I was using. I made sure that I did this at the end of each section of our lesson. So at the end of predict or clarify, I made sure to give her a specific compliment or feedback depending on what connection she made or what light bulb moment she had in that section of our lesson plan. Madison and I finished our text storms. We moved on to some activities of close reading, which help us dig deeper into the text and look at text features and define any new vocabulary that we found. I followed some organizers that I found online, and we went through and we defined some interesting words that we found that she didn't know prior to that, and then we went through the text and found ideas and words again that were difficult for her to understand. A strategy that really worked well for Madison was using vocabulary cards. Anytime that we came across a word in a book that she was unfamiliar with or didn't really understand the definition in which it was used, she would write it down on her note card, and we would find the definition and write it down on the back. Sometimes we would find the definition in the glossary, or we would look it up on the iPad, or simply sometimes we would even just do a close read or look around the word to figure out that definition. This was an approach that Madison said that she had used outside of her time with me. On the second to last lesson that I had with her, she came up to me and told me that she was using this approach of finding the vocabulary words and writing them down in her Lexia, which is a reading program at the school. She said that she knew a lot of the words that were on the program and that she shared that with her class and her teacher. So by her telling me this, I know that what I've been teaching her is really sticking, and she's making those connections and using the strategies that we worked with outside of her time with me. At the beginning of each lesson that I taught Madison, I gave her a fast assessment to complete in which she would read a page of text for a minute, and then we would mark how many words she would have read in a minute. I did this about 6 times, and each time there was a different number of words. The first time she was at 107 words, and then we just went up from there. She was pretty consistent with her fluency, only making a few errors, maybe 2 to 3 each time that she read. So she was really consistent in her fluency and how many words she was reading per minute. In our time together, I assessed Madison using the Rigby kit, and I assessed her using a level 23 text. Madison wasn't my student at the beginning of the semester, so I wasn't able to go off of the same text that I used for the pre-assessment. So I used a level text that was applicable to her grade level, which is 3rd grade. So 23 was that level. So I used the 23 text. She did really well in comprehension. She got 100%. And in her words correct per minute, she read about 87 with only 5 errors. And she did very, very well in retelling as well, with about a score of 80. The next steps for Madison were definitely to build on the foundation that we've built this semester, which means to go off of fluency and the comprehension that we've worked on. She responded really well to the close reading exercises that I did, to dig deeper into vocabulary and looking closely at text and looking for that purpose in there that the author is trying to get you to understand. So I think having her continue down that path, really digging deeper and finding the meaning of the text, is the best goal for her right now.